How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome in, everybody, to the latest edition of the DocNJock podcast. We are at episode 313. I'm looking forward to it. Opening week of training camp. I pulled off a good one with Dish Network. I want to talk to Adam about the changing landscape. We've talked about this before, the changing landscape of sports in terms of how we watch it on TV. Lots of people are cutting the cord, and it's always interesting and fascinating when there's a contract dispute between these networks and the providers. And unfortunately for me, Dish Network cut off Fox Sports Detroit. I spent an hour and a half trying to get some kind of discount. I knew I was going to have to put up a fight because they're on to me. They are on to the DOC and his plan, so I have to really work my program. I have to work my skills, but I did get a discount. I did get what I wanted, but it took a lot longer, and I had to go through more workers. Joining me this week, as always, he's hanging out there in Indiana, doing his thing, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
Look, first off, I want to apologize to everybody because the audio quality last week, and I'm assuming this week, not where it needs to be. We are working on this.
Yeah, cuz I love producing on the fly. Like you said, we here at the podcast want to bring you the best audio quality. And as you and I were talking about the Lions, we're so excited. I'm like, you know what, cuz? You know what? The way I've done podcasts with others remotely has been just through a headset and things like that. Let's try this method. And you're like, yeah, and you perfect. I'm much happier with how you sound. So I do want to give you my sense of it in terms of Mike Daniels. I'm excited too, but at the same time, you're excited. I'm excited. Lions fan base is excited, but I want to pump the brakes a little bit. In that, an organization did decide to evaluate Mike Daniels, and they said, well, we want to go younger. We looked at your cap number. We don't want to pay you the $8 million. We want to, in essence, let you go. And the Detroit Lions did take a chance on a former offensive lineman from the Packers, and we got stiffed. So I know it's early in training camp. We want to be positive, but we would be remiss here at the podcast if we didn't at the same time bring up the fact the man is coming off of a foot injury. The man was evaluated by another organization, and not too often do organizations just say, hey, see you later, and are potentially probably don't care that the Detroit Lions picked him up. He is 30 years old, and remember that at times the biggest bugaboo that the Detroit Lions face is injuries. TJ Lang came in, and boom, he couldn't stay on the field. Mike Daniels, if he stays on the field, if he's available, I think he'll produce. And what do we say? Depth along the defensive line will be great because it gives you the opportunity to stop the run, and it opens up the opportunity for Jared Davis, for Jahlani Tavai to wreak havoc, to pressure the quarterback. I like the move, but the biggest concern I have is, can the man stay on the field?
I get that, but the thing that you have to remember, too, is it's a great contract. For something like that, it's a one-year deal, and all the money's already been given to the guy up front. So what's it matter? It's $7 million. Big deal. If he gets hurt 3 weeks into the season, you weren't looking at keeping him long-term. You were looking at keeping him for 1 year. And all that being said, yeah, you want him to be here for the entire season, but the way the contract is set up, I think it works out perfectly to protect the Lions. Again, Bob Quinn doing masterful strokes for this cap, and I think helping this cap out and helping this team out by signing a super team-friendly deal. Like, you have the money. You basically have to spend the money. If you don't spend it, you're silly. So you go out, you sign a guy, $7 million. You're right, he's 30. It's not like he's 33. It's not like he's 34. He's just approaching that point where you start to get a little bit nervous about signing players to any type of a long-term deal. This is a one-year deal. The guy is 30 years old. I think this is a great signing. I think this is a great deal for the Detroit Lions. You go out, you bring him in, and look, if it doesn't work out, cool. big deal. You can either let him go, you can cut him, you could possibly trade him come the NFL trade deadline. Not many trades get done during the trade deadline, but you could cut him if you had to. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think this is a great deal for the Detroit Lions. I think they did awesome work.
What do you make of the early storylines that you're hearing out of camp? I mean, Jahlani Tavai making news. There's been talk about Matt Patricia being a little bit more calm. The guys are handling their business now. Obviously, some guys have not made it to camp yet, Darius Slay and Snacks Harrison. But at the same time, it seems early on, the storylines are relatively okay. People are not too critical at this point in time in training camp.
I mean, it's training camp, right? This is what you're going to do. There's nothing to be critical about right now. I think the big thing to come out of training camp this past week was the conversation about Matthew Stafford being a more mobile quarterback. I thought you did a great job posting a tweet on our Twitter account at Detroit Podcast asking whether or not Matt Stafford will rush for more than 376 yards. That's what Russell Wilson did last year. And I think you did a breakdown on it, and it comes out to roughly 23 yards a game.
The reason why it came out is people are observing what's going on in camp. They're seeing Stafford roll out a lot. They're seeing the opportunity for Stafford to be more mobile. But I think step one is we're going to see Matthew Stafford probably move in the pocket a little bit more, designed rollouts. But if the line breaks down, I do think there's an opportunity, if Stafford is in better shape, not to, consistently run, a la Lamar Jackson or a la the other running quarterbacks. But just if it does break down, Stafford has shown he is a little bit fleet of foot. I know the biggest concern that people have is that they don't want to see Stafford hurt. But look, this is professional football. If you got to run 6 yards to get the first down, sometimes in terms of defense, the guy that's unaccounted for the least is the quarterback. And so if there are opportunities to run, I do think maybe Matthew Stafford this year might have an opportunity to earn the most rushing yards. Does he get that number that Russell had? Probably not. But I do think there's an opportunity for him to get a career best, maybe in the neighborhood of 275 to 300 yards.
Yes, I don't think that's too many to ask, and I don't think that's too much to be worried about, especially for Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has proven time in and time out he is a tough SOB. The guy played with a broken back last season. Let that sink in. That's crazy. The guy had fractures in his spine, and he was still lining up under center to take snaps. I think having a pocket that is a little bit more flexible, it's able to roll out. It's designed to put Stafford in a position to make that decision on the fly. Do I throw the ball or do I tuck it and run? I think that's going to help this offense out. I think it's going to help help the defense out by not allowing them on the field, giving them more time to sit on the sidelines and rest and recover. And I think the offense, you'll see, will take monumental steps forward just because Stafford is a better passer when he's in rhythm. He's a better passer when he's on the roll or he's moving or he has the option to run the ball or to throw the ball. We talked about it a couple times now. He's a top 10 quarterback in the play action passer rating with a minimum of 250 attempts last season. So I think you can see that number jump even higher, and I think his overall QB passer rating is going to go up as well. On top of all that, I think what you're going to see with Darren Bevel is a concerted attempt to try to limit mistakes by Matt Stafford. And I'm not saying put the reins on him, but what I'm saying is put him in a position to be a more accurate quarterback, to be a quarterback who has more than just one decision. He's going to have multiple decisions in multiple outlets to throw the ball, to maneuver the ball, to get the ball downfield. And I think a lot of that is going to be giving him the option to tuck the ball and run, giving him the option to have some play action passing, giving him the option to roll a pocket out and either dump the ball out into the flats or hit a wide receiver who's open down the middle of the field. I think you're going to see a much more creative playbook that Jim Bob Cooter wasn't able to instill or didn't know how to put that into action. I think you're going to see that now, and I think this offense is going to be much better because of it. On top of it, you've got a running back in Kerryon Johnson who, once they figured out how to use him last year, when I say they, I mean Jim Bob Cooter, once he figured out how to use him, that offense looked a million times better. And they were winning games when he touched the ball. I think it was 17 times a game from the running back position. If he touched the ball 17 times, they were able to control the pace of play. They were able to control and win ball possession, and they were able to put points on the board. He gets hurt, that offense kind of goes in the tank all the way up until week 17, where they take on a Green Bay team that didn't want to be on the field with them and didn't care about the game. And then you have Matt Prater throwing touchdowns to other guys. It's absolutely bonkers. But I think this offense is going to look a million times different than it did last year.
I do too. I just think that you're going to have the opportunity to have ball control. I do think the execution should be there because they're going to run high percentage plays. And I do think the key will be, if plays break down, what kind of creativity can Matthew Stafford come up with? He's the key. He's the straw that stirs the drink in that offense. And if he can extend plays, if he can, limit the mistakes and really grasp this offense, there's an opportunity too, because I did get a chance to read that Darrell Bevell did indeed work with Brett Favre, and Brett Favre threw for 33 touchdowns, had a great year later in his career with the Minnesota Vikings. So Bevell has an opportunity to imprint what he wants with this offense. And I do think that, when everyone looks at the Lions, they know the obvious strength is that defense. And I do think that the offense and that whole unit needs to take it on as a challenge and say, hey, look, we got to carry our end of the deal, because if that defense can give up between 14 and 17 a game, 20 points, relatively speaking, in this NFL in 2019 should be relatively easy. But as we all know, the Lions make everything difficult. But if everybody stays healthy, there are a plethora of weapons. And I think you've read it and everybody read it. TJ Hockenson has been amazing in camp, making catches, has a presence. Dude is large. And when I'm talking about a tight end, I'm up to his waistline in terms of standing next to him. I'm like, damn, that guy's huge. And he has got a good attitude, is making plays. And obviously, the interesting note out of the first week of camp is he has to work on his blocking, which everyone said was his strength. But obviously, when you're in camp, when you're going up against solid defensive linemen with experience and linebackers and safeties and seeing a bunch of different schemes and looks, it's going to be complicated. So TJ's got work to do. But early on, the return has been good from the top 2 draft picks, and everyone's kind of excited about it.
Yeah, I think you've been most impressed by him as camp is kind of worn on. What's been the one thing that has really shocked you about him besides his size?
The thing that's shocked me has been the fact that they are targeting him regularly in camp. Sometimes, what did we say last year? Okay, you got Kenny Galladay, throw him the ball. And in camp, at least, the ball is finding number 88 regularly from all the quarterbacks, not just the ones and the twos. The other quarterbacks in camp are finding number 88, and that's a good sign. I think that TJ has the ability to run routes, and he's got a presence, his size, and if he becomes that go-to target in the red zone, oh my goodness, look out. He doesn't have to fall into that niche like every other tight end early on in his career. You can actually make him a weapon early. He can be that guy if he's targeted properly, if he learns to route run, if he learns the secrets in order to, break free a little bit when you're playing early on. Sometimes you don't get the breaks, or sometimes, too, I think they might be also willing to utilize him in the slot to get him open a little bit more, or to use him as a decoy in order to open up the field for some short passes. So I like the fact that he's being utilized. I like that when you're watching practice, you're seeing, oh, wow, pass after pass after pass is going to number 88, and it's nice to see he's not dropping a whole heck of a lot. There's not too many mistakes. Obviously, a couple here and there in terms of, starting to play a little early before the snap, but other than some minor mistakes, TJ Hockenson and Jahlani Tavai have been impressive, and it's good for Matthew Stafford because he's going to need it. Matthew Stafford has to put, everybody's going to talk about it. Out of all the players that you're going to see featured from us and from all the media, the guy that everyone's looking to is Matthew Stafford. And he's got some big comparisons to live up to because, you and I were talking a little bit and we're seeing who's being evaluated in the league and who's getting all the buzz. Matthew Stafford's kind of one of those quarterbacks where people know what he brings to the table, but at the same time, there's always that caveat. There's always that, yeah, but. Well, he's a good quarterback, good arm, yeah, but. And everyone debates it here in town, and still to this day, it's 50-50 in terms of the support. He would get more support if he earned some big victories and performed well in big games, in the biggest moments. And it stinks, too, because obviously younger quarterbacks are coming to the league. They're getting all the hype. And early on, I was actually kind of surprised at the hype for Baker Mayfield because of the fact that he got drafted by Cleveland, an organization that's not known for, stellar quarterback play. Now he gets onto the field and he looks good. He performs. He's zinging the ball over the place. And I think what also people are gravitating towards Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, is his personality. He's got this bravado, running up and down, kind of a la Brett Favre, that gunslinger mentality, that personality that's like, hey, I'm the guy. Make me the guy. I want all the attention. We're going to make things happen. He's outspoken, talking on some national platforms and things like that. But it got us to thinking, who has a better year this year? Is it going to be Baker Mayfield? Who's going to slot out ahead this year because of the fact that obviously Baker Mayfield has better weapons, but at the same time, Cleveland historically just sometimes when there's expectation doesn't perform, and you may look at the Detroit Lions and say, well, obviously it's going to be Cleveland. There's better weapons. He's got Jarvis Landry. He's got Odell. He's got better running backs. But at the same time, you got to keep everybody happy. You have to earn and have good chemistry in that locker room to have success. At the end of the day, I do think Baker Mayfield has more success, but I'm not going to be terribly shocked if Stafford has a rebound year, especially from the year he had in 2018.
Yeah, I think Matt Stafford's season is going to be much better this year than it was last year. All that being said, I think Baker Mayfield's going to have a very good year. I just don't know if it's going to match what he did last year. Going into this season, I'm expecting a little bit of a sophomore slump. Look, you've got all those weapons. You're a young quarterback. Somehow you have to figure out how to facilitate the ball and get it to your wide receivers. And these just aren't any regular old wide receivers. These are like diva-like wide receivers, right? I mean, Odell, you've seen Odell. You've seen his antics. You've seen him take on kicking nets and lose. Jarvis Landry is another one who, when he wants the ball, he wants the damn ball. You now have to get Baker Mayfield. And look, Baker Mayfield is a guy who carries a big stick, right? And I'm not just talking about the one in his pants. This is a guy who, when he enters into the huddle, all eyes on me. All right, I'm the leader. You're listening to me. So he knows what he has to do to lead. But you have to remember, this is his second year in the league. And these are extremely vocal, extremely demonstrative wide receivers. And these are guys who expect the ball. And when they expect the ball, they want the ball on time and they want it there. I think Baker has a little bit of a step back season. I don't think it's monumental. I don't think it's horrible. But I think compared to what he did last year, it might be a little bit of a sophomore slump. I think we go back and we look at Baker Mayfield's you go to footballreference.com and you look back at his seasons, you're like, wow, he had a really great rookie year. And then you look at his second year, you're like, it was a little bit down. Could we say sophomore slump? Because I think the third year he's going to come in and he's going to take over and he's going to be lights out. I loved Baker Mayfield. When he was getting drafted. I remember draft day, watching the draft and being like, wow, I didn't think he would go number one, but he was my quarterback. He was the guy who I loved the most, and I wanted to follow, and I wanted to watch, and I wanted him to be successful because he's such an outlier. He's so different. He's a guy who grabs his crotch, gives you a throat slash. He will basically say F you, and he's going to go out there, do what he wants to do, and he's going to score. And he's going to make you pay for it. I love that attitude. I love that mantra. I love the way he carries himself. I just think this year, Stafford grades out just a notch above him. And I think Baker maybe takes a step back from where he was last year. And it's just acclimating himself with all of his weapons and trying to figure out a way to make everybody happy. Sometimes for a quarterback, it's not all about having all the skill in the world. It's not all about having the greatest touch. It's not all about being able to diagnose what the defense is doing. Sometimes you got to go in there, and one of the hats you have to wear as a quarterback is how do you manage everybody else's personality? How do you keep everybody on an even keel? I don't know about you, right? I still play sports, and one thing I noticed about me playing on my hockey teams, right? I was normally the guy who could go from 0 to 60, right? Everything would be calm, everything would be awesome, and then in a blink of an eye, I'm the guy who's ready to rip people's heads off, and I'm ready to take those heads and beat somebody else in the face with that head. And I found that if I had a guy who could kind of keep me controlled, right? My buddy Mikey does a great job of it, right? He knows the signs when I'm starting to get a little too riled up or it's getting a little bit too physical. He'll grab me, pull me off the side, he'd say, not now, stay calm, Don't be stupid. We don't need a penalty here, right? So sometimes having a guy in charge who knows how to dial it up and dial it down is the best thing a quarterback can do, especially for diva wide receivers. And I think Baker's going to have to learn that, because Baker himself is a highly emotional guy. He's a guy who runs on 1,000 all the time. So if you're running on 1,000 and you've got these two wide receivers who are running on 1,000 and sometimes 1,200, I mean, the scale only goes up to 1,000. So these guys are already off the chart. It just becomes too much. So I think Baker's going to have to try to find that consistency level to kind of manage those personalities. And because of that, I think Matt Stafford, you don't ever have to worry about that. Matt Stafford is the leader of that locker room. Like it, love it, hate it, whatever it is. Matt Stafford is the leader of that locker room. And nobody's going to come into Matt Stafford's locker room and going to tell him otherwise. It's just because of that. I think it's a little bit of a learning curve. I think that's why Matt Stafford finishes slightly ahead of Baker Mayfield this year.
Okay, and then the one thing that everyone wants to talk about is deep plays. Obviously, you have Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay. I do think they're going to implement it more. Not as much as we would like, but let's set the over-under at like 8 plays over 50 yards in terms of passing plays. Will the Detroit Lions air it out a little bit? Will they take advantage of the skills of Kenny Galladay? Because that's what the fans want. The fans are like, look, you have Kenny Galladay. There's an opportunity to throw the ball at the highest point, and Kenny Galladay should have the opportunity to have the edge because of his height and his speed. Do you think the Detroit Lions take advantage of it and run some more deep plays? Because obviously, if you're going to have a run-heavy offense, you're going to have to do something to keep the defensive line off your ass. Because obviously, they're going to line up, 8, 9 in the box, and they're going to make it so that Stafford passes the ball and make them one-dimensional. That was the big thing we saw last year was, okay, they're like, sure, dink and dunk all the way up the field to the 30, and then when it's time to score, nothing would happen. And so the Lions settled a lot of times for field goals, and that was the most frustrating aspect of watching that offense was their inability to kind of change it up, mix it up, and eventually it cost Jim Bob Cooter his job. Do you see the Detroit Lions airing it out and at least executing some deep plays? The talent's there. I mean, you would think with Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay, there should be some opportunities to air it deep and to execute it.
I think you're going to see a vastly different offense this year than you've seen last year. And I think this offense will take advantage of plays downfield. I think part of the design rollouts, I think the reason for those and the reason that you're seeing those is those are going to open up plays downfield. It's going to help stretch the field because think about it this way, right? You've got a quarterback in Matt Stafford, and nobody really talks about his mobility. Nobody says this guy's the most mobile or agile quarterback out there. Most of the time when you talk about Matt Stafford, you talk about him being a pocket passer. So you're now going to put the ball in his hands. You're going to have him rolling to the right, rolling to the left. It's going to suck that defense up. It's going to force those linebackers, whether they buy it or not, they've got to bite on him possibly taking off. And the moment that they don't bite on that, he's going to scamper for 5 to 7 yards, maybe break it for 15, and he just moved the ball and moved the chains, right? So now you're going to force that defense to come up and suck up and bite on that play. What's that going to do? It's going to open up everything across the middle. It's going to open up fields down play. This is going to be a perfect offense for, I think, 3 guys in particular. I think you're going to see an awesome year out of Matt Stafford. I think Kerryon Johnson's going to go light years ahead. You're just going to be like, wow, is this the same running back we had last year? And I think a guy like Kenny Galladay is going to probably excel and exceed the most just because of that play action, just because you've got those design rollouts. Again, those things are going to force defenses to adjust their coverage, and it's going to impact the secondary. So I totally see him excelling. I see this offense taking more shots downfield. I think it's going to be one of those things where to start the season, it'll probably look very reminiscent to what you had in Seattle when Darren Bevel was calling the plays there. I think early on it's going to be a lot of running plays. It's going to be a lot of handoffs. It's going to be a lot of design rollouts where Matt Stafford's dumping the ball into the flats. And then I think probably right around game 5 or 6, I think Darren Bevel is going to kind of take some of the chains off, and he's going to really open up and dial up this playbook. And he's going to allow Matt Stafford to really accentuate and excel what they've got developing downfield. I think the big issue is Kenny Galladay's got to figure out a way to get some separation. That was the one thing that killed him last year. Yeah, he's tall. Yeah, he can out-jump guys. But somehow, some way, he's got to figure out a way to at least get an arm's length away from a guy. And I think that's what he struggled with a little bit last year. That's what a lot of these wide receivers struggled with last year. So I think that's his next level of progression. But I think the way this offense is set up, I think those three guys are going to have, I don't want to say phenomenal years, but I think they're going to excel, and I think they're going to deliver. And I think if you're a Lions fan, you're going to be happy.
Will Matthew Stafford end up being a top 10 or top 5 quarterback this year when all the stats shake out? Do you see him rebounding? And actually, when the rankings come out in terms of QBR or where he stats in terms of completion percentage, at the end of the day, who has a better year? Do you think that Matthew Stafford could end up above Baker Mayfield when the season ends?
I think he ends up above Baker. I don't know if either one of them neither one of them will finish top 5. Let's just start there. I don't know if either one of them finish in the top 10. I could see this being a scenario where Stafford finishes 11 and Baker finishes 12. I think it could be one of those seasons. I want to tell you Matt Stafford's gonna finish in the top 10, but I just don't know. And the reason I don't know is what happens with this offense, right? Like we're over here speculating, we're talking about it, and everything I just said, I firmly believe that they're going to open up some things downfield. But all that being said, does it happen? Like, we don't know exactly what Darren Bevell's going to go, what his playbook's actually going to look like. So I don't know. And I know last year Stafford finished what? Top 20. I think he was like 17. He's 15, 16, 17. He was somewhere in there, I believe. So does he finish better than that? Absolutely. I think Baker, when it was all said and done, I think he was right there near top 10. So I just don't know 100%. I think Stafford finishes 11, and I think Baker finishes 12.
Ooh, real close. Yeah, I think along the line, Stafford has the opportunity to rebound. I think he's got a lot to prove. I do think that,
last year was a shit show.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. But you got to remember, too, he braved it out. He toughed it out. He had broken bones in his back, and he was a guy that wanted to get on the field. I don't know why, because sometimes in the NFL, you realize the Lions have committed to you for long term. If you got broken bones in your back, I know that, partly the task was going to be just to hand the ball off. And in essence, maybe that injury did cost Jim Bob Cooter his job because of the fact that, hey, Jim Bob couldn't really call passing plays. Because you got to remember, when he did, when Jim Bob Cooter did come on the scene, the offense did improve slightly from the previous regime. It just kind of got stale and it became way too predictable. There have to be better wrinkles. But at the same time, what factors did Stafford's injury play in that? Obviously, you can't step back and do all the things you got to do when your back is damaged like that. So this year has to be a rebound year. Everyone knows it. Everyone has to see it. And eventually speaking, this is make or break. I really do believe that the organization has to believe that Stafford has to do some things. Now, does he have to get the playoff win? In future episodes of the podcast, we'll talk about what has to happen for Matthew Stafford. What will we be willing to accept in terms of a season for Stafford and others? Stay tuned for future editions of the podcast. But first week of training camp has been good. Obviously, as training camp progresses, you're going to see more installs. You're going to see the opportunity for more plays to develop and what the schemes are going to be. But so far, so good. The Lions have made good news, and it's nice to see for once that the Lions, hey, they go out there, they make news, they go out and get talent, and they are getting talent on the defense, and they're building depth there. The biggest question marks that everyone has is going to be in the secondary. How is that going to shake out? But I do think that at this point in time, in training camp early on, they do like what they're seeing in terms of the emergence of Tracy Walker. Obviously, you have the likes of Quandre Diggs. The linebackers there are evolving, and I do think with a great offensive line and defensive line, you have the makings of a decent football team, at least one where we can talk about 7, 8, 9 wins, and that's a good start for training camp, and I'm happy to talk to you about football. I can't wait to see how the storylines progress. Follow us at Detroit Podcast. I'm out there a couple times a week, checking out all the happenings, getting some interviews and talking to these guys. And I did like, one thing I did like was the attitude of Jahlani Tavai. sometimes when you talk to a rookie, they haven't been fully trained yet in the art of, PC talk. And it was great to ask Jahlani Tavai a question. And my question was quite simply, and you can find it on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. I just said, hey, what have the vets told you about playing linebacker? And he said straight up, they've told me, you got to be one of the baddest motherfuckers out there. Now, he didn't use those words. He said, they told me to be the baddest mofo out there. And I like the attitude, because that instills like, hey, you got to go out there and you got to be a leader. You got to be feared. Playing linebacker is not for the weak at heart. If you know that, if you know football, linebacker is a position where you got to be a destroyer. You got to go in there and blow up plays. You got to be able to read and recognize plays that are happening all around you. And if Jahlani Tavai can, pick it up and become a linebacker quickly, oh my goodness, then he'll cause all the media, all the fans to have egg on their face, because he was the most questioned draft pick probably in Lions history in the last 6 years.
Who has more pressure on them?
Yep.
Who has more pressure? Is it Jahlani Tavai or is it TJ Hockenson?
Ooh, that's a good question. They both have a lot of pressure to succeed, but at the same time, I think Jahlani has a little bit more pressure because of the fact that at linebacker, there's so much chaos. There's so many things, and especially from what you hear, cuz Matt Patricia's defense is not just something you easily pick up. There's a lot of read recognitions. There's a lot of things you got to be aware of, and it's just naturally speaking hard to pick up. But I do think Jahlani has the ability to work hard. He's a guy that's a football guy. He wants to learn it. In terms of TJ, you have Matthew Stafford throwing the ball. You have an experienced offensive coordinator that's going to be able to get him in and out of routes, be able to teach him some things. And obviously, in terms of depth, they have a lot of tight ends. So early on, I do think the expectation is going to be solidify the blocking, take care of business there, your responsibilities. The offense will come, because naturally speaking, it takes a little time for tight ends and things like that. For the defense, I think Jarrad Davis is going to have the most pressure of the three, because of the fact that, hey, he's a guy that's going to be called upon to improve. They improve the defensive line to allow him some more freedom so he's not bottled up all the time. So Jahlani Tavai has pressure on him, but I think that the expectation is already that, okay, there's a certain ceiling, and he wants to raise that ceiling. And early on, he's done good work. I think that pick that everybody saw was quite surprising, in that already early on in camp, he's picked off Stafford a couple times, and he's making some plays. So that's a good sign early on in training camp. But at the end of the day, when the time comes, when you're called upon to make plays, you got to make them. And unfortunately, Jarrad Davis has some plays last year that you and I recall where we were like, why are you going right when the play's like right up the middle? Why is there an open running back and tight end right there? What was the biggest weakness last year for the Lions defense? Covering a tight end. So hopefully this year that all improves. But so far, so good. And like I said, it's training camp. And that's what we're going to focus on, is some positives. And obviously the things we're going to critique are going to be, can the guys stay healthy? Can the improvements be something that carries on to the field? Because, hey, in training camp, you can look great. You can be a training camp legend. You can be a preseason Hall of Famer. But when game one happens and Kyler Murray's on the 18-yard line and you need to stop, you better make it, because that's where we're going to judge you. Training camp is fun, for sure, to see everything, but when the games start, we're going to be watching, and we want execution. That's the biggest thing. It's getting better every day, and execution, and the Lions have to. They have to this year, because it's a critical year, and I think they have the talent to match it. They can do it, but at the end of the day, when the time comes and you got to make those 3 key plays to win a game, will they make it? History says that they won't. But this year, I think there's an opportunity to change things around, and I hope that they do for our sake, because we've done 313 podcasts. 312 of them have been about how devastatingly disappointed we are with the Detroit Lions. Maybe we can get a stretch of 100 podcasts where we could talk about a Lions team that starts off 6-0. That would be awesome.
You know what? Real quick. Do you think this team and this franchise is turning a corner? Does it feel like that at all? I mean, you're down there at training camp, and look, I know when training camp rolls around, everybody's excited. But does it feel like this organization has kind of figured it out a little bit?
The way I would describe it to you is they have a plan that you can kind of look at and say, okay, we see what they're doing. You know what I mean? In years past, you'd be like, why is this happening? Why is this going on? Why does it seem like you have a defensive team, but you're drafting offensive people? Or why does it seem like you have an offensive team, but you're drafting these pieces at this spot? At this point in time, it seems like the plan makes sense going forward. Okay, you got you're building through the lines, you're building through the trenches, like you said. You're starting to build depth along the defensive line and linebacker. You're starting to get a cap that's within reason. Obviously, having $20 million in cap space makes it easy so that you can bring in people that you need at the right time. It's sounds like from the makeup of it, from the outside, the framework is good. Now, when you get to the nuts and bolts of it, the questions are going to remain. Is Stafford the guy? Is Jared Davis the guy? Is Jahlani Tavai, TJ Hockenson the right guy? Because at the same time, we can look at, comparatively speaking, these are decent Lions. But when you extend it out to the league, the Chicago Bears got Khalil Mack. Green Bay has Aaron Rodgers. New England has Tom Brady. And you realize, okay, relatively speaking, when you extend it out to the league, you might say at the top end of the National Football League, the Lions lack in terms of supreme talent. Can Kenny Galladay get there? Can he be a guy like a Michael Thomas that actually, is worthy of a $100 million deal? That's yet to be seen. But relatively speaking, how bad the Lions were is also in play here, is that they're better than they were. But now we don't want to compare the Lions to the Lions. At the grand top of the scale here, at the end of the day, how do the Lions compare to the Patriots, the defending Super Bowl champs? I'll get a chance to see it next week. I can't wait to see the Lions and the Patriots practice together. But at the end of the day, we all know the Lions don't stack up to the Patriots. That's it. Yeah. It's the bottom line. And you know what I'm saying? What you're looking at is...
I get that, but...
The Lions are better than before.
You also have to realize the Patriots have had a game plan in place for the better part of 15 years now. I think you're comparing apples and oranges right now.
Yeah. At the same time, I would say that the Lions are better, and we'll look at it that way incrementally. Okay. But look, we're starving. We don't want to go from. I know some people will be happy. Hey, if we win a playoff game, you and I are guys that look at, okay, what's the top end bottom line here? How close are we to winning a Super Bowl? We're not there yet. We're at the starting point, in essence. Now, before, you had no chance. You weren't even in the arena. Under Caldwell, under others, under Schwartz, you really weren't even in the arena. Now you're in the arena, but you're still way up in the nosebleeds. You don't have exactly the belief, and you don't have the top end talent across the board to make a deep run. But are they better? Can they be a playoff team? I think this group could do it. But like I said, whenever you talk about the Lions, you got to say, hey, it's the Lions. They could do anything. Would you really be surprised if they were 3-13 this year? Would you be surprised if they finished? Would you be surprised if they finished 6-10?
Yes. If they finish 6-10, I would not be surprised.
Right.
If they finish 3-13, I would be blown away.
3 wins is terrible. Yeah, it would be terrible.
I think my brain would melt.
Yeah, I think so. I think we could scream at each other from here to Indiana and be like, "What the heck? what the heck is going on?" I love the football talk. We can fire up the mic and talk 45 minutes of football. I love it. Thanks.
Isn't that crazy?
It's good stuff, man. I love it.
And produce on the fly.
You have to. That's what we do here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. The reason why we're able to broadcast every single day, the reason why we've been able to earn success is thanks to the support of great sponsors, the Motor City Pawnbrokers and the Flick Chat application. For all the information regarding the Motor City Pawnbrokers, they got 4 great locations all across Metro Detroit. They got great deals, great customer service. All over Metro Detroit, there's opportunities to find deals and things like that. Go check out MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. And if you do happen to go into one of the locations, definitely tell them the Detroit Sports Podcast sent you. For all information, again, go visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com today. And if you've agreed or disagreed with anything that we've said in regards to the Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford, our comparison between Stafford and Baker Mayfield, head on over. More people signed up this week. I love to see it over there at Flick. You go to the Google Play Store or the App Store and you type in 2 words, Flick Chat. And it's so easy to join. All you got to do is download the application and you enter in all lowercase DSP and you're in the group. Or if you follow us on Twitter, find the invite link and you can debate, have fun group chats if you watch wrestling or if you're watching any of the games, the Tigers game, the trade deadline, anything going on in the world of sports. Hey, if there's a major fight going on in Major League Baseball, head on over to Flick and share anything that's cool for us to see. It's a great group chat application that connects all Metro Detroit sports fans, and I love it. Even Adam gets in on the application, shares a couple thoughts a week. Exactly. Don't miss out. Join the application. Flick, a great sponsor of the network. All right, cuz it's interesting in that, as the podcast has progressed, I've shared with everybody a little bit of my struggles with Dish Network in terms of the fact that every so often, certain programming gets cut off. And I've shared that CBS has been cut off, Fox News, CNN. Now, those, in essence, really didn't bother me because you can go without those things for a while. But as the negotiation for Fox Sports Detroit started to roll around, I was like, oh no, because what you start seeing is the network's like, oh, you're going to lose Fox Sports Detroit, cut off Dish. And I'm not in that position to do that. I've been with them for 18 years. They usually take care of me. They've given me so much off my bill, so many free channels, so much great entertainment. But I do expect, hey, if you're not going to provide me something I like, then you're going to take care of me, okay? But now, I figured out, okay, every channel that gets cut off, I just call up and say, hey, I like this channel. I like CNN. I like Fox News. I like this channel. I like the Mystery Channel. I like, Impact. I like all these. They're like, huh? Dude, how do you like every channel that gets canceled? So I recognized, eventually speaking, that, okay, they were going to catch on that, okay, this guy calls up, and they have. It's pretty obvious, okay? But Fox Sports Detroit legitimately is something that I watch every single day for the World Poker Tour, for the Tigers, Pistons, Wings.
Did you let them know it's part of your job? Were you like, I run a podcasting network, one of the largest in the state of Michigan.
Exactly.
How
does this
am I
happen?
going to watch the Detroit Tigers?
Exactly. So to set the scene, it was supposed to happen last Monday, but it didn't. I'm like, oh, maybe they had this month plan where they sometimes negotiate in good faith and say, okay, we'll keep the programming going on. Well, Friday afternoon at noon hit, and boom, they yanked it. And I asked my wife, and I started to see online, I'm like, oh, they yanked Fox Sports Detroit. It's done. And I got a little concerned because HBO last November was cut off of Dish, and still to this day, HBO is not offered on the Dish network. And they openly now are just like, just go to HBO Go or go to HBO Now and just buy it for $15 or go to Amazon and buy it separately. And I'm like, well, I was getting it for $10 here. And so they were like, okay, we'll keep extending it. They've given me Showtime for a year now as a replacement for it for free. And I got into Billions, and so I really don't miss HBO all that much. I do miss Real Sports. I think I'm going to miss it now that Hard Knocks has the Raiders, and everyone's talking about how awesome it's going to be. But at this point in time, the changing landscape of sports is making it so that it's tough now for these providers to negotiate with the teams. And so, quite frankly, the first person I spoke to, I had my plan. I realized, okay, it's going to take a little bit of time. And it took me 35 minutes to talk to the first person. And it was a foreign lady. And she basically read from a script. And I was like, wow, okay. She was telling me, yeah, the teams are having to raise prices at a drastic rate. And then there's that pause because the screen's refreshing for her. And I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm like, this isn't going to work. And I said, okay. She said, well, I understand, Mr. Macaroon, what's going on. We can give you $3 off your bill. I said, excuse me? I said, I watched it every day. This is terrible. I'm really upset. I need to have Fox Sports Detroit. I don't care about the reasons. I don't want to go to this website. I don't want to join email lists. I want compensation or some programming in regards to what I can get to offset my frustrations. So she's hemming and hawing, and she can't really do much. So she's like, I'm going to, herself, she says, I'm going to take you to another person. And I wait on hold again for another 40 minutes. And so I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Am I going to have to start over? And then I speak to one of the first times with Dish Network ever, I spoke to just quite frankly a rude person. And his name was Jesse. And he's just like, we're going to offer you $3. That's all we can do. And, there's not too much going on. I know you've called before in the past, And then when he said in essence, because I said, well, there's competitors, there's YouTube TV, there's other stuff going on that I can get. And it would be easier for me, to get what I like cheaper somewhere else. I might have to consider cutting you guys off because this is ridiculous. He's like, basically, go ahead, do it. He's like, competitively speaking, CBS got cut off now from CBS has been cut off from DirecTV. This is happening all the time. He basically said, go do it. And when I got that vibe of go do it, I said, I want to talk to a supervisor right now. And immediately he caught my tone because I got mad. And then right away I get to this lovely lady named Lynette. And she gets on and she's joking around. And she's like, yeah, we've been taking calls all day. Because not only in Detroit, all Fox regional channels across the Dish Network platform are not there for Ohio and across the country. So she was taking calls all day. And she goes, this will not last because of the fact that people are cutting this off left and right. Sports is a major, major programming entity. And she's like, look, I understand. I'm so sorry that this happened. I said, hey, I talked to 2 people before you and they were horrible. And she's like, I'm really, really sorry. I'm going to give you $70 off your bill. I'm going to. Yeah, she just lopped it right off within 4 seconds. And I said, thank you. And I appreciate that. And she said, oh yeah. She goes, I've been a customer service person for this long, but I've not seen the anger that I've seen this time. And she's like, you've been with us for so long, I can definitely take care of you. And I said to her, okay, why couldn't your other two? And she's like, I understand. She's just said, I could do this for you. And thank you for being a great Dish Network customer. And she's like, in essence, she said, the God's honest truth is, from her perspective, that the salaries of the teams make it so that the channel's expenses are so high. And so they want to recoup their investment. Fox Sports Detroit and Walt Disney have paid so much money to cover the Tigers. They want to recoup it from the providers. And she said it's just unfortunate that the price raise is so high. And what will happen is, she said, if we paid that money that they want, eventually speaking, we'd have to raise your bill about maybe $13. And I said, I understand. She goes, we don't want to do that because, in essence, we're willing to lose the $30,000 off of this channel, but not $100,000 if we raise everyone's price by $15. So you see what they're doing? They're trying to understand that they have built-in analysis as to how many people they're going to lose, and they're okay with it, but they don't want to raise the price so high so that they cause everybody to cut the cord. They understand the cord has been cut. So what they're talking about is just lost profit. They make profit, but they're just not making as much as before, and they're not willing to pay above a certain amount. And she's like, we're dug in. We have this number. We've given it to them. We are not moving. And she was cool. She had a lot of information. She was friendly, funny. And I was like, I was just saying, why couldn't someone else just do that? And she said, obviously if we did it for everybody, we'd lose a boatload of money. But for you, you're cool and stuff like that. But I did recognize that the other two put up a fight. I was kind of impressed at that they just kind of said, yeah, and this is what they just kept saying it like over and over. And so I had to kind of go into angry mode a little bit with Jesse to get to the supervisor, but they took care of me. But I think they're on to me now. And but at the same time, it's worth it to do it because of the fact that, hey, you're cutting off a service that I really like. But at the same time, cuz I think there's going to be a changing landscape in terms of how these networks cover and carry sports. I just don't see another avenue where you just don't have, okay, we're Fox Sports Detroit. If you want us, pay $8 for it. That's what they got to do. I don't see them being bundled and working with all these networks and providers in the mainstream the way it is now because of the fact that they have to have so much money. And so I think that what's going to happen is Fox Sports Detroit will be carried as a direct-to-consumer product. And if you want it, subscribe to it. You pay $8, you get it. And I would do it. I'd pay around $10 a month for Fox Sports Detroit and ESPN, but nothing more. And I just think that's the changing landscape is that everything's going up. The salaries are going up. The fees are going up. And eventually speaking, you and I are going to have to end up paying the bill. But at the same time, I don't know if Fox Sports Detroit's ever going to come back to Dish.
It sounds like a lot of what you said, where it is a changing landscape in sports. And look, I cut the cord a while ago because I ran into a similar situation with DirecTV, where basically once AT&T bought DirecTV, the customer service went just into the trash can. And I was like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. I've been with you guys for, I think it was almost like 15 years. I was with DirecTV. And I was like, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't deserve to deal with this. I've been with you for way too long. And I was upset. So I ended up canceling DirecTV, and I went to Sling. And similarly with Sling, if you want the sports package, you have to pay for the sports package. So I've got it breaks down in two ways, right? So you've got your regular television, and then if you want ESPN, you have to pay, I think it's like $10 more a month. So I've got the package with all the ESPNs. Because there's more than just ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPN News. There's like the ACC network, there's the SEC network, there's a whole bunch of other little things that ESPN's in charge of. So I pay extra for that, and then on top of that, Dish has it set, or Sling has it set up to where you can get NHL Network, NBA television, you can get MLB, you can get NFL, you can get Red Zone. You can get all these for an extra, I think it's like $7 a month, or they have a combo package where they package like 3 of these other little television packages where you get all these other little channels for like an extra $20. So we do that. But basically, like you said, I'm now paying for television.
Exactly.
I am picking the shows that I want, and I'm paying for them. And it just kind of, I think this is where television is where it's headed. And I think a lot of it is just because it's becoming so expensive for programming. Programming has gone through the roof. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're the only entity that doesn't charge anymore. We just keep our prices the same. We got the same. Right. We got the same 7 options, and we still give away the podcast for free. We just ask for, hey, if you like it, kick us a little bit of money. But right. Eventually speaking, down the road in 5 years, we're like, damn, Adam needs a lot more money, man. Indiana's more expensive. We're gonna have to charge $2 a month. Oh, man. It was good to talk to you on this podcast. Always enjoy it. I'm glad we got a good workable system now with you calling in over the phone. Shout out to Bose because, man, I'm a Bose guy. I love their product. I think their microphones are great. The work that they do is great, and it allows us to banter back and forth and things like that. And so, hey, look, in the world of Detroit sports, right now everyone's going to be paying attention tonight to whether Al Avila makes a trade, whether something happens with the Tigers. We'll be here all over it. Follow us on the network at Detroit Podcast. I do think the most interactive Twitter page. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Definitely follow him on Instagram. You can see all the struggles he's having in the bathroom over the last 7 days. It's a big struggle. Big struggle, look, for Adam, man. I know it's hard to look and go, oh, the toilet paper's low. I should refill it myself. Adam's more like, nah, dude, I just want to show everybody I ain't got toilet paper. I think your wife put it best, dude. Like, man up, open the drawer and fill it up, bro.
Look, I woke up. I meandered to the bathroom. I was still sleepy. I sat down, took a shit. And next thing you know, I look over to clean myself, and there was nothing there. Nothing. And she's the one who complains about it all the time to me because, like, I'll do it. Whatever. I'm a guy. You're a guy. You know.
Exactly. But the funny thing, you did make me laugh out loud because you were frustrated at seeing the toilet paper put on the stand but not in it in between. And that's what I do. That's what I do.
That's what I do. Yeah, all guys do that.
Oh, that's exactly. Okay, good. I was like, yeah, that's what I do. She's like, you can't just open it up and be like, no. I'm a guy that would actually pinch my fingers trying to put that little slot back in the hole. I'm not trying to pinch my fingers. I'm just going to lay it right on top there, and whatever happens. Eventually speaking, it's going to end up in the roll.
Yeah. I mean, whether I do it or whether she does, it's going to end up where it needs to go. Exactly. I'm not really worried about it.
Exactly. For Adam the Jock Strozinski, follow him on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Shout out to Jeff Risden. He paid us a compliment. He said, oh, man, nice to meet him out at training camp. He said,
oh, dude, isn't he the nicest guy ever?
He said, you know what, guys? I can't listen every week, but when I do listen, you guys got a great, fun show. And it brought almost a little tear to my eye. I said, yo, that's so nice. You know what? He did listen. He said, we do a fun show. And that's what makes it fun to do a podcast. It's free-flowing. We say whatever we want. We are able to have the freedom to say whatever we want, and that's why I love podcasts.
We need to get him on, and you've got like 8 phones. You're like a drug dealer. Yeah. So we've got to figure something out to where we can have him call into one, I can call into the other, and we'll just get this going. It'll be great. Great time, sir. I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thanks for downloading. We'll talk again soon.
This was Locker Room Talk.
Second dick. Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head, they counsel me, they understand, they talk to me. They talk to me.